Hi everyone, this is Stephanie with Hightower Stitching. This morning I've got video 234 and it was really a nice challenge for me, and I ended up calling it roll them and cut them, and then there's some sewing them together, and I'm ready to start if you are. I'm going to slide over the project. Okay. The project comes from the Quilter's World, Autumn 2024, which is now very current, page 36. And if you look at it, you see all these wonderful 2.5-inch blocks. And when I saw how you put it together, I had seen this method before, and for some reason I just veered away from it. I couldn't wrap my brain around it. And then all of a sudden the other week, like last week, I was looking and I said, you know, I think I'm really going to give this a shot and see if I like it. And for me, I really do like it, because this is going to take all of these squares and put them together in an organized manner instead of making long rows of 2.5-inch blocks. We're going to make a block with 36 patches, and then we're going to put those together. So that said, this is a large quilt. You do not have to go this large when you get ready. It's going to be 84 by 84, and it takes 49 blocks. That's that 36-inch patch block. All right, sample time. There are two ways, at least two ways, that you can attack this. And one of the ways that she started with, this is a tutorial, and I'm sharing her ideas with you, and then we can go from there. But one of them was, to start this project, part A would be to use jelly rolls, or a leftover jelly roll, which is what I use to make my sample, because you start with whatever you have left in there that you can get to go together, and then you can add things from your stash that you want to do. All right, so I took some of them from this set of jelly roll strips, which are nice and long, and this is what I came up with. Let me get him all the way up there. All right. All right, and you can see that I have my 6 rows across and my 6 rows going up. But I didn't sit and, like I said, put little squares together. And I'm going to show you what we're going to do in just a second when I show you this second sample. So this one I did, and I ironed my seams to one side. And that's going to be one little difference with the one I'm going to show you that I did next. So then I said, now I'm going to get serious about this. And I didn't have a jelly roll that I wanted to do. So I went to my fat quarters, and I chose a package of fat quarters that went together. And this is the square that I ended up with. My 6 by 6, it's got 36. Each one of the blocks is going to look like this if you want it to. It looks just the way you start out. And I found out that with the fat quarters, I could get 7 sets from one 18 by 21 sheet. And what I did was I laid the colors that I liked together, about half of them, and then I started cutting my 2.5-inch strips. And I'm going to show you how I laid those out. But I didn't know exactly the way it was going to turn out. but I had a good idea because I did my strips. So taking my fat quarters, I'd lay like 2 or 3 that I knew were going to be in it on top of each other, pressed them nice, and then brought them to the cutting board, and I cut going across the strips at 2.5 inches wide. And so out of the, lots of times there are a lot of colors in those collections. And so I just picked the ones that I like to get started. And so these are the strips that I decided to use. And they're the ones that you see in the finished block. Okay, if you'll look up at the finished block, you'll see here's that rust-colored one. Here's my blue one. Here's my flowered one. And then you're going to see a cream block. All right, and it's going to be in, when you start, for this to work right, that's going to be in the 4th position. So if you look across 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got mine in the 4th position, so I've got it set up to do. And then I've got the last 2 strips down underneath there. All right, now I hope that's pretty clear. This actually is one of them, and I left it because it was going to be my last one, but it's going to always show me which way these should go, because they're similar, and if you just start sewing and cutting and sewing and cutting, but this was my way to remember what went, which ones followed each other. All right, so far, nothing hard. We're still doing what you would do. You would take and cut, and then you'd cut 2.5 inch strips, and then you'd probably cut them into 2.5 inch blocks. But we're not doing it that way. We got it this far. Okay, so according to my strip here, as I was doing it, I tried to keep up with what went where. All right. The first thing is, after you've got your strips cut, you're going to take and you're going to lay your strips next to each other, right? And that's just the way that goes. And you want to stitch them in the same order all the way across. And you'll come up with whether you want to start here and add the blue on, or go the other way. It doesn't matter as long as you end up with all of your strips. And you can see, I'm gonna talk about that in a minute, something. But on this particular one right now, I have they're just laying, and it looks like I've got them pressed a little bit. And I think you'll see on the next one where I go, because here I was just getting my strips put together, sewn in order. Okay, so stitch them. All right, the next part is to press your seams, and you can either open them, which is what I started doing. I like that. Or you can press them to the side. And that's what I did on the other one. All right, I've got these. Now I'm going to fold it in half. This was the whole thing. I'm going to fold it in half. Make sure that my edges are together. And then I'm going to gently come down and get it evened out. Okay? So now I'm ready to do the next part. This is when it really gets fun. This is sort of fun because it goes fast. Once you get your strips and once you figure out your colors and you got your material and you cut a bunch of strips and you keep them in order, then this really starts to go, and you can get into your chain stitching, your machine stitching in rows. So that's all I have on that one. Just pressing those seams. Now, this is the part that I liked. I liked all the parts. All right. What you're going to do is you're going to fold it lengthwise. We've already talked about that. But also, after you get them folded in half, you're going to come and you're going to sew the last seam. And this is the part that gave me, I didn't really want to go there a long time ago. And now I really had fun with it. So I've got it folded in half. I've done the last seam. Now I'm not worried about pressing it. All right. Now what I want to do is I want to trim one of the ends. And if you're using a fat quarter, you'll have a little extra material. But if you're doing just enough to make the 6 strips, and that'll be in the directions, then you want to be real careful about how much you go chopping off on the ends. So on this one, now I'm getting it over so I can go around the camera. It looks like I've got that nice and even, and it's ready to go. I'm going to take my cutter and cut it off. Okay. All right. We trimmed one end. Now what we want to do is we want to cut 2.5-inch strips, and we want 6. All right, so we're going to need that in a minute to keep in order. Okay, so I'm going to lay this at 2.5. Doesn't want to look perfect right now. All right, and I'm going to cut 2.5. And I want to cut 2.5. And I go down there till I get 6. Now, if you're using a fat quarter, you'll actually get 7. And after you make several of these, then you're already going to have enough of those cut pieces to make another block, a complete block. All right? And then we're going to get ready for actually making our block. And we'll move these because I have a set right here. I'm going to go back to this. Well, I actually want to go back to my finished block. I'm not going to use this right now. That was just for getting my pieces together. I want to go back to this, and I marked where the top corner was. So that's a good thing to do, because if you leave it or you start another project and you have to come back to it, then you'll have it marked. Looking for a seam ripper. All right, so here we go. Now what I have is a round, because it's all every seam sewn together, and we got to decide where we're going to take and cut them apart. Well, one thing that I noticed is when we get done, we're going to have this cream color. And as I was doing it, I said, okay, well, I know I want to separate this one, the first one, from the last one to make this one. So I'm going to go in here. Here it is. And here's the first one, and here's the last one that's right there. And what I did sometimes is I would go in. Of course, I can't quite catch it. And I would go across one side, and I would take and use my seam ripper and pull them out, and it went pretty fast. And once I got those done, then I turned it over, and this side would just come out as a strip. Now you saw I didn't get all of them, but there's a lot. There it is. Okay, so now when I open it up, let's see if those match up. Okay, so now I've got my first one done, and my cream's in the right place. So I'm going to grab another one of my sew together blocks, and I notice that the gold is gold, and the plaid. So turn it so you can see it. There's my gold, and there's my plaid, and the cut's going to have to be between them. Now, one thing I did find out, because this is a short run, and if you didn't change your stitch down to 2.3 or something smaller, you can actually pull this apart sometimes. And that's just up to you. Because this was good, very good material, and it would let me do that. I'm going to take my threads off. See if we got this one right. All right, I'm going to start. I'm on my second one. There's my golds. There's my browns. And they go together. And you say, well, there's nothing to that. Wait until you get frustrated, or somebody calls you and you get lost from where you were. Then the next one is going to be your cream and your plaid. So let's turn it around. There's my cream, and there's my plaid. And this one will not. Okay. Then it depends on how strong your thread is that you're using too, because you don't want to mess up one of your squares. But you come up with a technique that you can use to do it. All right, let's see if we got that one right. Oh, this is nice for doing a demo, and I'm actually got them right. Because for a couple of times, I kept trying to figure it out to do this, watching those. And I said, oh, don't do that. Watch the first one and the last one and open them up. And then here's part 3, and it goes in there. All right? And so I would do the same thing with the rest. Break between the flower and the cream. Break between the blue and the flower. Break between that colored brown and the blue, and you've got the box, and every one of the blocks is going to look like that. And you can see, if you were going to make 49 or less blocks, that would really be helpful, and a nice way to do it. It's not real nerve-wracking. All right, then the next thing that I want to tell you is pretty much going to be almost the last, is that I'm going to take my first 2 strips, and I'm going to put those together. All right, here's what I found out, is that because this was the top, I figured out, and it worked out pretty good, to come down to the bottom and pin going backwards, pin it going to the top. And so I have my seams open, so this will lay flat. And once I get it there, I take my pin and I come in to the bottom, and then I go at an angle to the top, because with my machine, it kept wanting to catch this back one. And between that and a little paper that I put on my machine, it worked. But now I'm going to do the next one. Now, if you had folded them, the seams different directions, they would lock, but then you'd have the heavier seams on the back. And then I did that one in going up. And I continued that till I got to the top. I pinned it going backwards from the bottom to the top. And then I sewed it the opposite. I put it on my machine, 1/4 inch, and I sewed down that side. And it was really neat, because these are the ones that I did that way. And if you start looking at where the blocks come together, you can see pretty much, like, gosh, this row's super. I got better and better at that. This was the first block I made. So, but pin them going from the bottom to the top, and then machine stitch from the top to the bottom. And then what I did was I opened them up, because I wanted them to lay flat, and I did set my seams. I took the first seam, or the one I was working on, and I pressed it, and then I opened it up, and I opened up the seam, and I pressed that, And I was really pleased with that. And so if we go back to our book, you can see how neat that is. And you can see how you set your strips up, and always set your strips the same way. You sew the last seam, and then you're ready to start cutting at 2.5 inches. And then you're ready to start setting them up. And you can see here, you can't, when the boxes are put together, the blocks, you can't tell where they start and where they end. And it's put together. There are the blocks. Then a row is put together. And then that row would be added to this row as you go down through there. So I'm kind of excited about getting mine to go a little bit farther, but I was to a good place for you to see how we could do that. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I hope you'll give this a try if you've avoided it like I did, because I said, I don't know, this doesn't make good sense to me. Well, it does make good sense, and I figured it out finally. Thank you for watching. If I forgot anything, I'll put it in the description. Please hit subscribe and leave comments if you think of something that will help someone else to do this method or this technique. Thank you for watching.